Let's do talk about Treasury. So we're at 236. What you said, if it closes Friday above what, below where it is right now, so all it's got to do is stay here. If it and I'm talking about yields, then it's indicating what, 255?
Right. So, I mean, that 255 level has been on our radar for some time. And now, of course, it feels like it's so close. So the former resistance that we were watching was around 213, and that was based on a very important Fibonacci retracement level. And above that, that 255, 256 area is another Fibonacci level, but also very importantly, it's the upper boundary of what is a multi-decade downtrend channel. So once you clear that level, which I think ultimately it's proving that we have this momentum behind yields and ultimately it should get through that level, that the next level becomes about 3.25. So that would be a really major breakout, more major than what we've seen to date. But in the interim, we are looking for some consolidation before we get that breakout above the 255 resistance. And of course, just being mindful of the uptrend and the momentum behind it.
And I also thought it was interesting in your notes, you talk about crypto a little, but it's sort of in the same vein, almost correlated with the S&P. So you don't think that the S&P necessarily is going to be able to mount a move back to all-time highs, and that could make it difficult, in your view, even though the downside in Bitcoin you think is 38,000, and it's been challenged a few times, and that's positive, but you don't think new highs are in the cards for Bitcoin. And then we'll get to the S&P.
That's right, for Bitcoin. And Bitcoin actually is providing kind of cues for the S&P 500. We saw its corrective phase late last year ensue before the corrective phase in the S&P 500. We could actually translate that to just high beta stocks in general as well. Look at the software sector for one. It started correcting late last year ahead of the correction in the major indices. So we look to these kind of higher beta is of the market, sort of the real risk on assets, including Bitcoin, for cues as to the next step for the S&P 500. Bitcoin has stabilized. Of course, it's seen a loss of downside momentum after nearly halving itself. And that support around 38,000 is a very important level. We're glad to see it having held, except it does not mean that it's in the clear here. We have a loss of long-term upside momentum behind all risk assets. And that tells us that this year is probably more of a range-bound year. We're likening it to somewhat of 2018, where for the S&P 500, we saw a corrective phase earlier in the year, a big sort of mid-year relief rally, and then a massive correction at year end. So we use that as our analog for this year. And of course, we did see that corrective phase about 15% for the S&P 500. And now we think Bitcoin, S&P 500, they're embarking on what is an intermediate term relief rally. Perhaps it carries us up to about May, which is, seasonally a very normal time for the market to start to meet resistance.